Hello there, and a very warm welcome to another video from Change Tips and Tools. This video is part 2 of the Resource Capacity Planning series with me, Phil, the Brummie that hails from Birmingham, England. And remember, as promised, I will go through this training series as an end-to-end project, not skipping any detail, and I will walk you through step by step on how to build this template for yourself. However, if you can't wait until the end of this training series, you can get a copy of the completed template on the Change Tips and Tools Patreon, and the link can be found in the description. Now, the purpose of today's video is to create the base resource capacity tables of this resource capacity planning template. And by the end of this video, you will have learnt some more new tricks with Excel's Power Query. So in today's video, we are going to cover step 2 and step 3 of the data requirements of this template. So resources, we are going to create the resource table where we define what our resources are, who they are, and also we can create some generic resources as well. And in the resource capacity tab, we will create our capacity planning. So this is the working pattern of our resources. And then finally, we will create our planned and unplanned leave table as well, which is where we do our capacity adjustments. So without further ado, let's do this. Now, so last time we created all our tables in static data. I no longer need this static data support sheet to be visible, so I'm going to right click on that and select hide. I'm then going to add my resources tab next, so let's do the plus sign, rename that to be resources, and we're going to give this a number because it's going to be the second thing that we enter, so that's important. So 2 full stop space resources, and I'm going to color this again, so I'm going to right click on that tab and do tab color and make this red also. I'm then going to select cell B3, that's where I'm going to start. So I want the resources, so resource, use my typing fingers. I want the skill set. I then want to know whether the resource is generic. So in this instance, you're not always going to know the name of the resource, or you're not always going to have that skill set available within your team. But you still need to create demand so you're aware of, the requirements for that type of resource, or you're just not ready to name the resource yet. So again, you need to identify that whether it's generic or not, because only named resources have capacity. Generic resources by definition have no capacity, and you just need to be able to allow for that. So that's got a generic column, and then what the standard hourly rate is going to be for that resource. So I'm going to make these 2 columns. I'm going to highlight them, right click, do column width, and I'm going to make those 25, like so. I think generic resource, we're okay. Hourly rate, let's make that a little bit wider. Now, in here we are going to create up to 100 resources. So I'm going to do the sequence and do equals sequence again. So I want 100 resources. Now, the reality here is that you can have more. There's no restriction here, really. But just for the purpose of this template, I'm restricting it to 100 resources, but you could make it 150. That's entirely up to you. You just need to make sure you calculate that in your allowances for everything else as you're building the template. So the first is we're going to have the resource name. So let's just put Jane Smith in there. The skill set is going to be a drop down, and we're going to base that on our skill set table. So I'm going to do equals TBL, and there's the skill sets, open square bracket, select skill set, close that square bracket, and hit return. So let's pick them up okay. So let's just copy that from my syntax, control copy, escape, and then just delete that because I don't need it in that cell anymore. Then I'm going to go the data ribbon, data validation, select data validation again and do list, and I'm going to use the indirect function here. So the equals indirect, and again remember indirect turns text into a range. So open quotation mark, paste in that syntax that we've just done for the skill set table, close the quotation mark, close the bracket, click OK. So now we've got the skill sets in there fine, and Jane's going to be a project manager. As far as the generic, it's going to be a simple Y for yes, N for no. So in the data validation, I'm just going to go simply data validation, list. I'm going to do Y, and comma as a separator, and N. And then click OK. And there you go. So I'm going to select Jane is not generic. And as far as the hourly rate, this is going to be a number format. So I'm going to choose number. And again, if I just put, in fact, it's not going to be a number format, it's going to be a currency, in fact, because this is, so select currency. If I do £80 there, and there we go. Now, obviously, remember, currency settings are set by your local settings on your machine. So for me, in the UK, it's pounds here in this instance, and that's what it's defaulted to. So I've now set my formats, and I've done my drop downs. So now let's convert this into a table. So I'm going to do Control T. So it's selected the sequence here as well. So I'm going to change this column to be column from B to E. So do B. And I'm going to click OK. So now I've got all my tables done for the whole range of the 100 resources here. Now, one thing to bear in mind, because we didn't start off with one row and then tab to create these, you'll notice that the data validation and the formatting hasn't copied down. So the way to do that, so on data validation, I'm going to select that first row, do Shift, Control, and do down. And I'm going to go to the data ribbon, and I'm going to select data validation. I should get a warning here. And there you go. So on this, it says the selection contains some cells without data validation settings. Do you want to extend the data validation to these cells? Well, yes, we do. So I'm going to click yes, and then click OK. And now that data validation is included for all of the skill set column. So let's do the same for generic. So we can select that first row with the data validation in, do Shift, Control, down, and do data validation again, select yes, and OK. And then finally, we've got here where we've got the hourly rate, and I want this to be the same format all the way down. So I'm going to do Shift, Control, down, and just make sure that as far as the format is concerned, they're all currency. Done. So that is the resource table created. So let's give it a meaningful name. Remember, I'm OCD when it comes to naming your table. So in table design, I'm going to call this TBL resources, like so. So let me now just add the other resources into this table. And there you go. Done. So now I want to add this to Power Query and also to my data model. And I want to do some cleaning up here as well. So I'm going to do on the data ribbon with anywhere in the table selected. I'm going to do data ribbon from table and range. Is one of the things that I want to do is make sure that this here is a currency. So I'm just going to select the drop down and make sure it's a currency and do replace current. That's fine. And then I want to make sure that all the nulls are removed from this table. So again, I'm going to do the drop down on the resources, select that, do the drop down, and I'm going to untick null and click OK. So those are all the null values. And as you can see over here, it's recorded those steps. Now, I'm just going to click on the cog here because I want to check what it's done. So this is what I want to see, does not equal null, which means as we add new resources to that table, it will automatically include them. I'm going to click OK. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with the name. I'm going to call that TBL resources. So leave that as is. And I'm going to do close. So on the home ribbon, close load to. And it's going to be only create connection and add this data to the data model. So I'm going to click OK. And as you can see, there's our calendar that we created previously, and it's created 12 rows. So I'm just going to close that down for a second. Now, the other thing I want to make sure is when we apply protection to these sheets, is I need to make sure that people can interact, or the user can interact with this table. So the final thing I'm going to do on here is I'm going to do Shift Control button held down to the right, then press down and down again. And then I'm going to do Control 1 and just take this lock off to make sure that once it's protected, people can interact with this table and change the data. So click OK. So that is the table for my resources done. Next, we're going to create the next table that we need, which is the resource capacity. So let me add a sheet. Let's rename this. So this is going to be the third step that we want the user to complete as far as data is concerned. So I'm going to do 3 full stop space. I'm going to call this resource capacity and hit return. I'm then going to change the color of this. So right click on that tab color, and let's make it a nice green there, nice dark green. So again, I'm going to select cell B3, which is going to be my starting position. So the columns that we want in here is that we want the resource. I want to know when the capacity pattern starts from. So the start date, and it ends. And then I'm going to put the days of the week in here. So I'm going to do MON for Monday. And then this should just copy across as a series. So I'm going to drag that across until we get to Sunday and let that go. Wonderful. And then I'm going to add a calculation, a visual aid in here so we can see what the total capacity per week is for a resource. So if I go total capacity, like so. So again, I'm going to make this, I'm going to select this column, right click on the header, change the width to be 25, click OK. Let's make these both 15, so select them both, right click, column width, make them 15, click OK. And then we've got Monday, and then let's just make that fit like so. So this is going to be a drop down. So again, based on the fact that we've got 100 resources, we need to define a working pattern and a capacity pattern for that's capable of fitting all those 100 resources. So again, I'm going to do equals sequence 100, because we're going to have we've got a capacity of 100 in the resource table, so we need to be able to fit all those within this capacity planner here as far as detailing working patterns. Now, as far as this table's concerned, I want the resource to be a drop down, but I only want to include resources in the drop down that we've not put a capacity pattern in, and B, I want to exclude generic resources from this. I don't want them to appear in here, because remember, a generic resource by definition has no capacity because they don't exist. So that is going to be a drop down. So to support that drop down, I'm going to create another tab, and I'm going to call that resource capacity. So if I rename, right click on it and do rename, and I'm going to call that resource capacity support, like so. Hit return. So first thing I need to do is I need to create this as a table, so I can, like we did in our static data, is I want to create a filtered column where it's checking to make sure that that resource does not exist in here, and secondly, that it's only named resources that appear in here as well. So let's do that. So first I'm going to do this formatting here. So I want those to be a short date. So on the home ribbon, just make those short dates. These are going to be numbers. So I'm going to put something in here for now as well. So I'm going to go Jane Smith. Ooh. Start date will be, let's do it from the 1st of the 1st, 24. And let's do it to the end of the year, 31st of the 12th, 24 as well. So these are dates. These are going to be numbers. So all the way over here, I'm going to make them a number with just one decimal place. I'm then going to select Monday to Friday, type 8, and then do Control Enter to enter that value across what I've selected, like so. Then I'm going to do 0 on a Saturday and 0 on a Sunday. Then all I'm going to do is select all of these here and do Alt and the equals key to automatically add that sum, so we can see a sum total here. So that's what I want in this table. So what I'm then going to do is I'm going to do Control T, and I'm going to do it from B here, and I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to give this table a meaningful name. So on table design, I'm going to call it TBL. Capacity. Hit return. So now I've got my table name here. So one thing I'm going to make sure of is I'm going to do Control down, make sure that those are all short dates. Format wise, I'm going to make sure that these all, if I do Shift Control down, are a number with one decimal place. And then in here, I'm just going to click inside the formula within the formula bar and do return, and it should copy that all the way down. And now I can take care of this, the resource filter. So on my resource capacity support, I'm going to do resources. I want to look at 100. It's going to be 100 there, so equals sequence again, so my visual aid. So I've got 100 resources, max, and in here I am going to filter this list. So I'm going to do equals filter. My array is going to be table resources. Open that square bracket, select resource column, close the square bracket, and then as far as include is concerned, I'm going to do table resources again, open that square bracket, and I only want named resources. So if I do generic, close that square bracket, equals n, like so, and then close the bracket on the filter function, and there we go. So let's then wrap that in a, let's wrap that filter in a sort. And there you go. So next thing I want to do now is I want to check if it's been used within the capacity table. So used, and we do that countifs function. So count if the range is going to be table capacity, open square bracket, resource, close that square bracket. The criteria is going to be the cell in column C. It's my reference. If I do that, so it's counting 0, so it's not found any in the table as expected. I'm then going to put this if statement. So if the count is greater than 0, which means it's found it, then I'm going to do Y for yes, and I'm going to do N for no if it's not. And then I'm going to do another check, because obviously we've got some blanks here. So the last if statement is going to be if that does not equal blank, or 2 quotation marks, then do the check. Otherwise, leave it blank. And I'm going to copy that all the way down. So I'm just going to double click here. And there you go. So it's copied all the way down to 100. Wonderful. And then my drop down. So my resources not used drop down is going to be equals a filter. My array, what I'm going to return is this column here, all the way down to 100, like so. Include is going to be based on this column. Where it equals N for no. And again, I'm going to close that and hit return. So now you can see it's only including the resources that have not been found in the table. You can see Jane Smith here has got a yes against her. So if I go to the resource capacity and I'll just delete Jane's name from there, and then go back to here, you can see Jane's now included in the drop down. So I'm going to go to my capacity, resource capacity tab. I'm going to select the first row, do Control and Shift and then down. So with them all selected, then we're going to go to the data ribbon, do data validation, do list, and I'm going to point it to this cell here, the start of that filter, and do a hash mark so it includes the spill range. enter that in, click OK, and now it only shows me those resources that have not been used, and also it doesn't include generic resources. So let's select Jane Smith there. Done. So let me enter the rest of the resources as far as what I want to enter into this table, as far as capacity is concerned. And there you go. So those are the resources now entered. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select across to here. So I only want this section to be editable, i.e. changed and interacted with by the user. But this, which got the sum in, I want them to not be able to edit that. So I'm going to select here across the top and then hold on the Shift and Control button and do down, and then down arrow again to get to the bottom and do Control 1 and just untick that locked and click OK. So that's now done. Next, let's add the adjustment table. So this is where we've got planned and unplanned leave for our resources, which will be an adjustment against their capacity. So if I select O3, cell O3, I want the resource name, the start of the leave, and the finish of the leave, what the type of leave is, so is it planned or unplanned, as in illness, and then what the total hours are per day, like so. And again, you can have as many as you want in here. I'm going to allow for 300 entries in this table. So again, I'm going to do equals sequence, and top 300. I've got 300 in there. So again, this drop down is going to be based on the resources. I won't put a filter on it, but again, it's up to you if you want to do that. Feel free. I'm going to do equals table resources, and when I say filter, as in you only include named resources in here. I'm going to do resource that works. Again, just copy that syntax. And I'm just going to delete that, and then we go to data validation. I'm going to do list, use the indirect function again, so equals indirect, open bracket, the quotation mark, paste in that syntax, close the quotation marks and close the bracket, and then click OK. So I've now got the resources in there. Wonderful. Let's make this 25, column width, right click on it, column width, into 25, OK. Make these both 15, click on that, column width, 15. The type, now in the type, so these are going to be dates, so let's just put some names in here. So let's do Jane Smith. Let's do from 2nd of January 24, so same day, so just one day, to 02/01/24. As far as the type, on the data ribbon again, I'm going to do data validation, and so first of all, let's get the syntax. So it's going to be equals table capacity types, type, close that square bracket, hit return. That's right. So let's copy that syntax there. Control copy, escape, and then delete it. And then do data validation on the data ribbon, list, and again use the indirect function, so equals direct, open bracket, quotation mark, paste in that syntax, close the quotation mark, close the bracket, and click OK. So I've now got that. So this will be planned leave, and then finally the hours will be 8. And again, I'm going to make that a, on the home ribbon, choose number with 1 decimal place. So just right click once. There you go. Let's do Control T to turn this into a table. Again, I'm going to do it from O, not N, not including the sequence. And click OK. And again, I just want to include the data validation. So remember, it doesn't exist here at the moment. So I'm going to do select that first row with the data validation, hold down the Shift and Control button, press down, then go to the data ribbon, do data validation. And again, it's warning me, I'm going to say yes and click OK. And now we've got that data validation all the way down. These here, I'm just going to make sure they're all short dates all the way down. So again, I'm going to select across, hold down the Shift and Control button, do down. On the home ribbon, I'm just going to do short date as a format. This one, I want that data validation all the way down. So select it, do Shift Control down. On the data ribbon, do data validation. Just say yes to that prompt, click OK. That's copied down. And then last but not least, I'm going to, again, Shift Control down. And I'm going to change that format to be a number with 1 decimal place. Let's give this a meaningful name, this table. And let's call this TBL capacity adjustment. Hit return. Let's add another row in here of data. Let's make this unplanned leave. Again, do 8. There. Done. Just make that a little bit bigger so it fits that all in. Done. Now let's give these tables some labels at the top here. So this is going to be build So build your team's working pattern stroke availability here. Let's do it in it. Make sure it's clearing hours. So return, and then select the top all the way across and do Control 1. I'm going to have the fill as a grey. I'm going to have the font as bold. And the alignment is going to be horizontally aligned, so center across selection, and click OK. Done. Wonderful. Now let's do over here as far as the holidays are concerned. So let's call this unplanned. Clear it in hours. Highlight, select those cells, do Control 1. Align it across, center across the selection. Font is going to be bold. The fill, let's make it this yellow here, like so. Click and click OK. Job done. And again, have I Control 1? Let's just make sure I've done the protection there. No, so let's just Shift Control to the right and then down. Do Control 1. Just make sure that protection's off for that table. Done. And again, can't remember whether I did it. Did I do it here? Control 1. Yes, I did. Right. Okay, and this is protected. So now I've done those tables. They're both they're both named accordingly. So let's get them into Power Query and also into our data model. So let's do our capacity first. So again, select anywhere in the table. I'm going to do data from table and range. So the first thing I'm going to do here, let's just make sure these are dates. Start and finish. Date only. Replace current. I am going to go over to here. I don't need this column because it's only a visual aid when they're entering the table. I don't need it for here, so I'm going to right click on that and remove. And then also here, I'm just going to, on the resource column, do drop down and exclude null. And again, I'm just going to double check the cog, click on it. And it does say does not equal null. Brilliant. Okay. So now I've got these into Power Query. I need to unpivot these. So I need to create an entry for each day. So with resource to finish selected, I'm going to right click on that and do unpivot other columns. Then on the attribute column, I'm going to rename that to be day, like so. Hit return. And then I'm going to create the list. So I need to create capacity pattern between these two dates for Jane and so on. Yeah. So, and you'll notice we've got some duplications. We'll deal with that in a minute. Don't worry. So I'm going to add another column. It's going to be custom. It's going to be date. And again, we're going to do the list function. So curly line or squiggly not bracket, number. I want number from. Open bracket. Select start. Close that bracket. And do two full stops. 1, 2, and then number from again. Open bracket. Okay, select finish. And close that bracket and then do a close curly bracket like so. Syntax is fine and click OK. And then going to expand this out. So select the two outward facing arrows and expand it to expand to new rows. And then going to convert this column to a date. On the home ribbon, select date. It now recognizes it as a date. Now, what I'm going to do now is I don't need these two columns here, so I'm just going to remove them. Yeah. And with the date selected, I'm then going to add a column. So add from date and time, and I want the day name. So name of day here. And then with that column selected, and on the transform tab, I'm going to extract. So I'm going to do first characters. I want 3 and click OK. So now I've got the first 3 characters. So what I want to do is where this day equals this day, I want to keep and then remove the rest on the Monday. Yeah, I only want, because I want to get rid of those duplications in here. So I'm going to add a conditional column. So on the add tab, add column tab, conditional column, and this is going to be where day equals, and here I'm going to select from the value, do the drop down. I want it from another, I want to compare it to another column, which is going to be our day name. Yeah, and if it equals it, I'm going to do Y. Otherwise, else I'm going to do N for no and click OK. I'm going to call this my day test, like so, and click OK. So now where I've got a Y for day test, those are the only ones that I want to keep. So I'm going to do the drop down and only select Y like so and click OK. And that's removed all the duplicates then. So we've now only got the actual dates here that are Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, etc., along with their capacity value. Now that I've done that, I don't need these two columns. So the only ones that I want to keep here are up to the date. So I'm going to right click then and remove the columns. Don't need those there anymore. I'm just going to move this over to here. Now, later on when we start working with the data modeler, we need an index, a unique index here, because obviously Jane appears several times and the dates appear several times. So I need to create a unique index using the resource and the date column. So I'm going to select those two, and then on the add column, I'm going to merge columns. I'm going to select that. My separator is going to be a hyphen. So I'm going to do custom, a hyphen or a dash, and I'm going to call this my capacity underscore index and click OK. So I've got this unique index now for each day, combining the name and the date. Now that I've done that, I'm going to change the table to be capacity, like so, and hit return. And then I'm going to do on the home ribbon, close and load to. I want to be only create a connection and add this data to the data model. Select that and click OK. Done. So it's now added 1,920 rows there. So next I'm going to select, just close that down so it's not in the way. I'm going to select my adjustment, my capacity adjustment, and again anywhere in the table, do data ribbon, from table and range. And what I'm going to do here is, again, I change these to be just a date, replace current. I'm going to get rid of the null values, so I'm going to do, again, just untick null and click OK. I'm going to check the cog to make sure that filter is phrased correctly. And because we've only got one name in there, it says, right, it must be equals to Jane. But that's not what we want. We want it to be does not equal null. That's what we want it to do. So as we add more stuff to it, it will include those automatically. So I'm going to click OK on that. Now, I need to create a list on here. So what I'm going to do first of all is on the hours, I need to create another column, and I'm going to call this column adjustment, because I need to turn this positive 8 into a negative. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to add another column, custom. I'm going to call it adjustment, like so. And then it's going to be hours times the asterisk -1, and click OK. And there you go. And I'm just going to make sure that this, first of all, in fact, I'm going to insert here. So I want to make sure that that is a decimal number. It's going to ask me to insert it, and I'm going to go yes. And then on this column, we've got it added. And again, here, I'm just going to make sure that that is a decimal number as well, because we might put 7.5 hours, for example, in there. And there we go. I've done that now, so I don't need the hours, so I'm going to remove that column. Now we need to expand this out. So if they say right from, one date to a finished date, is that, and it's 8-hour adjustment for planned leave or unplanned leave. So again, we're going to do add a column, custom. It's going to be date, and again open curly bracket, start typing number from, open bracket, select start, close the bracket, then do 2 full stops, 1, 2, start typing number from again, open bracket, select finish, close that bracket, and then close the curly bracket. Syntax looks fine, click OK, and again the outward facing arrows, I'm going to click that and expand to new rows. I'm going to convert that date column to a date now. So on the home ribbon, do date. So I no longer need these here. So I'm going to select both of those, right click and remove those columns. And then finally, I'm going to move that over to there, just move it over. I'm going to select resource and the date column and do on the add, to merge those columns. So I need to create that capacity index again. So again, my separator is going to be custom, it'll be a hyphen or a dash, and it's going to be called capacity underscore index, like so, and click OK. Done. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go to the home ribbon and I'm going to do close load to, and only create a connection and add this to the data model and click OK. And there's the 2 rows. So if I then go to my power pivot here and ribbon and select manage, you can see now that the tables are starting and the data is being added to my data model, like so. So let me close that down. Again, because I've gone into data model, it's giving me this warning here. And I'm just going to hit save, and it's fine. So that's where I'm going to end the video now. So we've created our resources and our resource capacity here. In the next video, we will look at our demand planning. So we'll create a demand table. And again, we're going to look at some different ways to do some filters in there. So that's in the next video. So I hope you found this video helpful and informative. If so, please remember to click the like, subscribe, and hit that notifications button for future content. I wish you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and please take care, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video of this resource capacity training series. Bye bye now.